Hi, Paul Thomson here from Spitfire Audio. I'm very excited today to be showing you something of a world first. It is not only Spitfire's first ever effects plugin, but it's also the first time that anybody has sampled the beautiful space of AIR Lyndhurst Hall, the famous hall in AIR Studios where so many incredible recordings have been made, blockbuster films, amazing albums, and of course where we have been recording samples for 17 years now. Now, within this effects plugin, you have an enormous amount of control. It's an order of magnitude more powerful than anything I've ever used before. There's over 67,000 impulse responses in here. You've got control of the layout of the hall. You can switch the room round, so you use both the way that we tend to record, but also the way that Hans Zimmer prefers the room set up. You've got control over the height of the canopy, the material, whether the wood is facing down or the Mellotech, and also the gallery damping, which is an essential component of every creative session, creative decision that you make at the beginning of a recording session. Do you want damping in the galleries, or do you want to leave them empty so that they ring out with that extra stone and wood that's up there? You've also got all of the usual microphone options that we would put up for recording in the hall, but not only that, you've got a few special extras as well. So let's dive straight in and have a listen to what it sounds like. So what are we listening to? Right, well, let me show you what that sounds like without any reverb. So I'm going to turn off the bus send. So we're just listening to the close mic of the solo cello. So here it is here, and this is what it sounds like just on its own. And then we're sending that, I'll pull the signal down here. So this is almost like having our close mic here now. It will be directed to roughly where it is in the stereo field. So that sounds like this. So that's the amount of close we want in the signal. But what we're sending here is we're sending to a bus pre-fader. In other words, the source signal. So it's not affected by anything I'm doing to the actual fader itself. And I'm sending that into the plugin. And it comes in here. It's coming in mono. And then we're positioning it using this positioning tool here. And I've switched the tree mics and the outrigger mics on. And that sounds like this. And actually, if we literally just pull out all of the close signal altogether, so all we're hearing now is the sound from the plugin. We can mute the tree mic and just listen to the outriggers. We can drag and move the signal, so I can put that right over at the edge of the hall. And what if we wanted to put it at the other side? I'll drag it over there, I'll change the direction. And then bring the tree back in. And we've got a variety of other mics. But before we do that, I'm just going to explain to you a little bit about this source signal and how that interacts with the main mixer page. So you'll see we've got this puck that we can drag around in the hall here. And this is interpolating between the many, many impulse responses that we recorded in lots of different positions in the hall. And if you look at the source control here, you've got a variety of controls here. So every position that we recorded in the hall was recorded in 4 different directions. So forwards, left, right, back, up, and then also a sub was recorded there to fill out the bottom end. So you can balance up entirely how you want this to radiate the sound. I'm going to use the dry recording of a xylophone. Now, this is the close wide mics only from the BBC Symphony Orchestra. So you can hear that's nice and close. You can hear a tiny bit of the room in the background, but that won't make any difference. So let's go back to the reverb. Let's drag the position of this instrument right to the back. We'll still use the tree and the outriggers, and let's make this radiate in a slightly different way. So a little bit more coming out, and actually quite a bit more going up, because that is the xylophone does radiate up quite a lot. So we're going to again narrow down our close mic here effectively. So it's kind of positioned a little bit there towards the back. We'll switch the, again sending pre-fader, so we'll switch that on. We'll keep it as a mono source in the hall, and let's have a look at what that sounds like. We can balance up the amount of close we're sending simply by pulling down the fader here. So that's entirely wet. And then if we put a little bit of our close mic back in, and as you can hear, we can pull that right up. We can put the player right next to the Decca tree. Tighten up the radiation a little bit. And again, if I take out all of the close, you can hear that's pulled it right forward to these microphones. We can also check out some of the other mics. So we've got this fantastic binaural head position. We've got the ambient mics. And again, if we push the position of the player right back, we've got mics here at the back, which are a great stereo pair. We've got mics on the canopy, and we'll talk about the canopy in a minute. And again, if I move the player right over here, change the direction back. And then we've got these fabulous gallery mics. So taking us into the galleries at AIR, and this is the wide version. And then we've got the back gallery here. And again, let's pop the player right at the back, a bit more radiating upwards. So it's just incredible. If you close your eyes, you could be sitting in AIR listening to the player in the room. It's quite extraordinary. And the amount of control that you have over the way that each instrument radiates. I can give you an example by showing you some French horns. So let's take the horns from the studio range. Just completely dry, that sounds like this. Let's put the reverb back on, and again we're sending this pre-fader, and let's set it up for horns. In fact, here's one I prepared earlier. So what's going on here? We're using the tree and the outriggers. We've got the canopy set high, so the canopy has 3 heights that you can select: low, medium and high. We're using Mellotech, so slightly damper material in the canopy as opposed to wood, which is great for percussion. We'll have a look at that in a minute for the drums. And we've got the damping in the galleries. So these are kind of big foam pads which are placed out in the galleries just to tighten the room up a little bit. We're using layout A. So we're using it the way that a lot of composers and engineers set the room up, but we've also recorded it reversed the other way round, which is the way that Hans Zimmer prefers to use the room. We've put the instruments over where they would sit usually. I'm using it in stereo mode, so I've got 4 players, so I'm just giving it a little bit of width to that section. What else have we got? Right, I've set up the radiation so that the instruments are radiating primarily backwards, because as you know, when you hold a French horn, the bell is pointing backwards. So we've got quite a lot going back, a little bit out to the sides and to the front, and a little bit up, but the predominant sound is going backwards. And let's see what that sounds like. And then we can alter, if we just listen to literally only the reverb. If we look at the shape section of the plugin, we've split each of these responses to the room into 3 sections. First up, you get the direct signal. So that's the signal that emanates from the position of the instrument and hits the microphones first. Then you've got the early reflections. So those are the first reflections bouncing off the walls that then hit the microphone. And then you've got the late reflections. So that's as the sound starts to blend and build into a smoother reverb tail. All of these can be set individually, and you can also mute the direct signal if you want. But we've got these both set to 100%, so we're just hearing the natural sound of the room. You can also stretch the early reflections to make them longer or shorter, and also the tail. We'll come back to that in a minute. But we've just got that all switched off at the moment. There's also an EQ, which is switched off, where you can EQ either before going to the reverb or after coming back from the reverb. So that's incredibly useful as well. So let's go back to our mixer and our source and introduce a little bit of the close mic sound back in. So as you can hear, you can balance up and just get the perfect blend between the sound of the instrument in the room and the sound of the dry signal. What would effectively be the close mic up against the instrument out in the room. So as another example, let's load up some mixed flutes from the Bernard Hermann Composer Toolkit. This was recorded in Studio One AIR. So again, we're using the close mics only, and we're going to, let's put the staccato up, and we're going to position these roughly where the flutes would go, but maybe slightly further over to the side. We'll keep that stereo. We'll just use the outriggers. So I'll turn those up a little bit. We'll bring the canopy down. We'll leave all these as they are. And then we'll direct the source in a more flute-like way and slightly less French horn way. So it's going to be quite a lot forward, but also a little bit up, because the flutes also radiate upwards quite a lot. And then put our close signal over there. So let's hear just the room first. And put our close mic back in. So just as another percussive example, and something with a bit of bottom end in that we can really hear the effect of the sub, we're going to try the timpani. And again, I'm going to use the BBC SO timpani, but just using the close wide mics, which sound like this. And then we're going to put them into the hall. Let's just hear the sound of the hall first up. We're going to position them at the back where the timpani section would be. Let's make them a mono signal. Put our tree and outriggers back on. And these ones are going to radiate out a little bit. They are producing a sound that radiates laterally quite a lot as well, and up, of course. So we'll put a bit of sub in there. Let's see what that sounds like. And if we really dial up the sub, you can hear you've really got that nice solid low end now. And we can also try adding in the reverb. So if we use a pre-reverb send, so you can really sculpt the shape here. Not that you want to add that much boxiness into it, but as you can see, you can really kind of shape the sound that is going into the reverb as well. And then if we bring back our close mics in again. Now, one thing, if we dial up the top end of the EQ a lot, you can hear the the slight delay between the sound emanating from the source hitting the mics, that direct signal, and our close mic here. And one way of just keeping the same tonal balance and keeping the same kind of 3D space, so without kind of collapsing it in a you know, time aligning everything and kind of having losing the depth of sound. One easy way to resolve that is to mute the direct signal that's coming from the actual impulse responses from the source, and that gets you to here. So you lose that slight flam that happens at the front of the note. And it just makes it sound slightly tighter and slightly more precise. To be honest, I kind of prefer hearing it. I like the natural sound of close mic leading into the actual sound of the recorded through the tree. We can change the balance as well if we put a lot more close in. Let me just bring the EQ back down to more normal levels. When you're balancing between your close mic and your reverb signal, there's a lot of things that you're going to get from the close mic. For example, in brass, you get some of that punch and sizzle in the close mics that you don't get once the sound has evolved into the room. That's quite a useful thing. And for percussion, you get slightly more body and slightly more punch from the close mics. But what you lose is that wonderful kind of warmth. For example, if I just turn the reverb off, that's great. You know, we've got a nice tight sound. It's quite punchy. But what we miss is if I just play only the reverb sound, there's that kind of thump of air that happens. And the combination of those two is kind of like the kind of perfect balance. And again, you know, we've just got something that's way, way back, right at the back of the hall. If we change the layout to layout B and just check out the difference in sound, it's really interesting. You can hear the difference from the fact that the galleries are now behind the source of the sound. So that's kind of, some of those early reflections are being bounced up, are kind of more blended in with the sound of the galleries. The galleries are not now quite such a distant sound. They're actually slightly bound more to the front of the impact of the sound. But also, you've got now the organ loft is having a much more direct influence on the early reflections. If I pull down the kind of late sound, and that's just your direct and early reflections. And then again, we turn the room round. You can hear the difference there. We bring that tail back in. And actually, we can also look at that by turning these off and listening only to the gallery mics. And then again, turn the room round. So lots and lots of scope for experimentation there amongst these various different controls. What about, let's go back to something kind of bright and percussive. Going to put our tree and outriggers in. Let's leave it at the back there, and also leave the gallery mics up. Now let's try and make it as beautiful, unearthly, ringy, long as possible. So I'm going to set the canopy to high. I'm going to put wood in, take the damping out. We'll leave the EQ. I'm going to stretch that tail right up to 200%. And you'll see that the reverb time has gone up to 5.2 seconds. Okay, what does that sound like? So obviously we're only hearing the sound of the room at the moment. So if we put our kind of close mic back in, somewhere like there. Let's have a listen to that. So you can get that really beautiful sound that just kind of surrounds you. Let's make it slightly more directional. I'm going to put the canopy on medium. I'm going to go back to Mellotech. We'll leave the damping out and leave the instrument where it is. But I'm going to pull the radiation down slightly so that it's pointed slightly more forward. And so I'm tightening up the way that the sound is radiating out into the room. And that sounds like this. And you can really hear that if we go for some untuned percussion. So here I'm loading up the overhead mics from hammers. And if we change the way that these sounds are radiating, let's give them really, really wide radiation. You can hear how that changes everything about the attack of the note. It really does kind of push it out into the room more. We'll go back to layout A. We'll pull them right up next to the tree. We'll leave the radiation quite wide. We'll bring the tail stretch back down to normal. Let's change the radiation so it's pointing straight at the mic. So you can hear that's sounding really great. But also what we can do is we can start to get creative here. So we can take out the direct signal. We'll leave it on retro mode. Let's push the early stretch up a bit. And let's pull the tail stretch down so that is quite tight. And reduce the overall level of that kind of tail sound as well. Now we've got a kind of chamber. So if we just alter the balance between our dry and our wet sound. Really interesting, and we can also put a bit of pre-delay on there. Let's make the early reflections quite tight as well. And maybe pull a bit of the bass out of the reverb. So you can hear literally within a few seconds, we've taken what was a super boomy, super wide long haul sound, and we've tightened it up into quite a slappy, percussive. We can even make it even more grainy. We go to the granular mode. And you see the kind of creative possibilities here expand way beyond just taking this as a kind of large, beautiful room and making it into something which is much more kind of characterful and can really enhance the sound of whatever you're putting into it. You know, we can even go, let's tighten up the galleries. Let's go put the canopy down. We've got wood, which is slightly more reflective in the canopy, so that's going to make it a little bit bouncier. Tighten up that pre-delay. And we could actually even just remove everything apart from the sound that is radiating directly forward. Pull those right under the microphones. And that sounds like this. So it's really, really great. You can get lots and lots of different characters of sound out of it. Let's push these back again. Put them somewhere in the middle. Let's just put them on the other side. Change the direction. What are we doing here? Sounds like this. Bring the direct level back in. Bring those early reflections, make them super long. Even longer. And we've got, because we're using granular stretch, we've got that great kind of grimy sort of sound. But actually I quite like the retro. To get that kind of 80s vibe on the pre-delay sound. And then, I don't know, let's put the tail back in. Bring the early reflections back down. And we're back to that kind of smooth sound. And obviously we've got the really high, for orchestral instruments, stuff like that, I'd probably use complex high, just to keep the sound quality of the tail as pristine as possible. So if we go back to the presets folder here, you can see there's tons of really great stuff to get you going, some which are targeted at specific libraries. So you can hear here presets designed for the LCO strings library, for Olafur Arnold's Evolutions, but you've also got some really creative sounds. So for example, if we load up Intimate Piano Warm, and then we've got the Originals Intimate Grand, which this preset was designed on. And if we just listen to the piano on its own, so that's rather lovely. But if we put it into this fabulous reverb setting. You get all the fabulous noises that come from that super close mic'd piano, but then spread out into the hall. It just sounds absolutely beautiful. And a slight variation on that, which puts the piano back more at the center. You can hear every movement, every rustle captured and just coming back at you from the hall. Absolutely fabulous stuff. So one last preset I'm going to show you is going back to our kind of orchestral stuff. So just using one of the Studio Brass trumpet solo patches. And then let's pop that into the hall. You can see where I've got the trumpet positioned here. I'm using the tree and the outriggers. There's the source, the radiation, and a little bit of EQ. And if we pull out our close mic, and as you can hear, it's kind of, it does need a little bit of the close mic in just to get that bite. But suddenly it's in the hall at AIR. It's just so much fun. I've got all kinds of stuff that I've recorded in my little studio at home. Dry guitar parts. You can sit in the hall. You can have them close up against you, up against the tree mic and the outriggers, or you can have them way back sitting in the hall, just ringing that beautiful sound of the room. It's so much fun. There's so much you can do with it creatively, as well as just using it as simply the nicest reverb you've ever heard. So that's a brief look at the AIR Studios Reverb from Spitfire. So exciting. It's our first ever effects plugin. As I say, it's an order of magnitude more powerful than anything else I've ever used. 67,000 impulse responses, control over the layouts, the canopy height, the materials, the damping, all of the different microphones. And that's even before you get to all of the kind of creative mangling opportunities that are in there as well to create something that is simply not possible in real life, taking the character of this beautiful space and then turning it into something otherworldly as well. If there's anything that you are interested in finding out more about reverb-wise, then drop us a comment in the comments below with any questions, and we will get back to you. We'll follow up on that. But for now, I hope that was informative. Thank you very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.